And start streaming, and let's see how this goes. All right, everybody. Hey, guess what? It is Saturday, August 24th, 2019. We started a tad bit late, but Ed's really tired. He's had some health issues, but he's still with us. Oh, and since I know you guys can hear me now because I've been tweaking that a bit, the other side, the Democrats have been yelling. Well, actually, the news has been saying "Orange Man bad, Orange Man bad," basically talking about Trump. Thing is, there's a show out there called "Orange is the New Black," right?
Yep.
So if they're saying "Orange Man bad," are they basically saying black men are bad? I mean, think about it. Ed, why don't you take it away from there?
Mm-hmm. Hang on a second. Good point. That is a good point to bring up. And that's the one thing that people need to pay attention what's really going on around our surroundings, because, it is one of those things that we don't pay attention. So it is one of those points that, with the talk show that orange going black, and then that's referring to the same structure as a black man. Those things make you wonder. So you got to step out of the movie, watch the production, and think about these things. I mean, this is like what's going on, because I'm redoing another deal on the birth certificate. And when I put this together, it's going to blow people's minds. But remember, you're an animal. When it comes down to it, you're an animal first. So, and until you realize that you're an animal first, and the rest of it is after that point, let me read a little something for you guys so you comprehend this. I had to go back because I was trying to find it, but Title 7, 136, we're all animals. So the term animal means anything with a vertebrae, anything with a back, a spine, species, including not limited to man or any other mammal, bird, fish, or shellfish. So with that coming down to, so when you go through your medical stuff and stuff like that, you got to remember that's cruelty to animals. That's animal abuse. So you can file animal abuse because, hang on a second, move my leg for a minute. Because that's animal abuse. So that is the point. Excuse me, I'm still going through medical issues. The other day I had to walk out of the emergency room. I was on life support, but I had to unplug myself and just leave. You wouldn't, just circumstances. But anyhow. So, but it's realizing what a vertebrae is. It's realizing what a mammal or a fish is, or, why are we mammals? Why are we animals? And remember, a man is an animal first. That's the point that most people don't get. They think that we're supposed to be compassionate, all this stuff right off the bat. When it comes down to it, we're just as vicious as the next animal. We're here for survival. That's more important than anything else, because if we don't protect the bloodline, we have no future. And people go, what does that bloodline mean? And that's what I've been on the phone with people for the last few weeks on the bloodline. And it's like, you got to realize your bloodline proves that if you're lawful or legal in this country. So you have to prove your bloodline. And I've got people all the time that says, well, I was born here, I have a right. No, you don't, because the 14th Amendment was never passed, nor could have been ratified. Because you got to realize in 1868, when they were talking about all this, in the Dred Scott case too, it became a corporation. We have two constitutions in this country. One is called the Vatican Roman Catholic Church, called Article 1 courts. Simple. Article 3 courts are constitutional court for bloodline natives. And that is the point when you do your paperwork and people go, what's the difference? And it's like, don't use capital letters, number one. And I've said, people say, well, they sent my paperwork back because it wasn't capitalized. Well, then you got to send it back and have them confirm their jurisdiction. So it comes down to jurisdiction. You got to remember that we got elected and public employees. Either you're lawful in this country or legal. Legal means you have privileges. Lawful means you have rights. It's that simple. And you have people all the time that says, well, my family was here, and I have my family's here 2 or 3 or maybe 4 generations, but I'm an American. I was born here. I don't give a shit if you're born in Timbuktu. You don't have a right in this country unless you're native. That means under the 14th Amendment, if you actually read the large C, small c, how it works, that means 5 or more generations, and that goes back to the Treaty of 1787. And that's part of the original Immigration Act. And this is the one thing that people need to read this stuff instead of being confused by these so-called Democrats who are sitting there destroying our country. Remember, it's like abortion. You know, everybody knows my feeling with the Bible and religion and all that crap and the bullshit. Okay, but see, if a woman has a right to an abortion, she has a right to abortion. She has to live with it, right or wrong. And then that becomes the difficulty of situation that the man has to live with that woman, right or wrong. So you got to remember, she has a right to her body first when it comes down to it. You know, people say, well, she didn't like it, she was getting pregnant, and then was going to throw her body off and, you know, stretch marks. Who gives a shit, whatever the crappy excuses that people come up with. The bottom line, if the woman does not have a right to her body, neither does man. Okay, people say, well, I have the right because the Bible says I can control the women. I don't give a darn whatever fantasy book you want to read. The Constitution and the Native Treaties, it's called American Native Treaties, we have several of them, you know, that is, they're the law of the land. They're the law that is equal to supersede the Constitution. And that's even admitted in the Supreme Court Administrative Rules. And please, read these administrative rules and stuff. See, it's up to you folks to read this stuff to educate yourself and your children. The school ain't going to do a damn bit of good because if they actually educate your kids, they can't make a living tomorrow by rape, robbing, and pillaging. And people say, oh, they don't do that. They do it all the time, folks. You know, I mean, we all know how many times a kid's been kidnapped for a ransom, for financial gain. That's a reality. So when people sit there and say that these things don't happen, it does happen. But the solution to some of these problems is knowing what, why, and how. Now, if it's an immigrant kid, if it was taken illegally, even though the kid was here legally, you know, then there's the protocol that can be presided for that. But if the kid's in this country and you get all these liberals, you know, whining, oh, mommy and daddy, they separated them. I don't give a shit. They don't have a right to be in our country. Because when it comes down to our country, it's our food resources first. Then it's called cannibal. And cannibalism does exist. And if you actually go on the internet, you can type in cannibalistic grocery store in other countries, and you'll see human cadaver meat for sale in grocery stores around the world. See, and when people sit there and act so prime and proper that doesn't happen, it's been going on for hundreds of years. You know, I mean, come on, everybody keeps talking about in Hollywood how these people, you know, eat the babies and cook the babies, and, you know, it does make you wonder about half the stuff that goes on. But then again, you can't let your mind go totally nuts on that type of stuff, because if it is happening, unless you're standing up to do something about it, you're not going to do nothing. All you're is a whiner. You're a complainer. And that's why when you file a complaint, that's what a complaint is, nothing but a whiner. So the only way that things can be solved is writing criminal charges on the perpetrators. I mean, you know, it's not like it was back in the late 1800s. If somebody does it, you just dealt with it. And everybody knows what I mean by that. So today we have other ways we have to deal with it. So seeing that when it comes down to Title VII, you know, 136, Section D, being an animal, okay? So when you're going through this, when they kidnap and harass you and torment you, and I'm not talking if you committed a crime, committed bodily injury to some individual man or woman, or especially child, okay? If you're totally innocent, now that's animal abuse. You're an animal if you're abusing an animal. So look up animal abuse and look how to file it in your court papers, your instruments. And don't, you know, an instrument sings. A document as a ship docks. It has to ask permission for the dock master to dock. So that's the one thing that you have to realize what the court system is and how it works. And it's learning what the words mean. And most people don't comprehend what the words mean, by our legal system. And this is the problem that we have, because the legal system of 1878, I think it was August 15th or 21, of the American Bar Association, that's the British government. So when it comes down to tribunal courts, yes, these lawyers and attorneys can do their court structure, but that's tribunal courts. That has nothing to do with natives. They can only do that for corporation members. And that means under Title, Title 18 or Title 42, 3002, that you're a corporation member. That means you have no rights. That means you have privileges. That means if you're a religious man and you believe in the Bible, that means you have privileges. You don't have rights. God didn't grant you rights in the Bible. The only way you have rights is by the Constitution and Treaty. And it comes down to 5 or more generations. And that's the one thing that even when you're elected a public servant, it's filing your paperwork when you're getting to that retirement age ahead of time, so that way you separate yourself, but you're still legally and most of all lawfully allowed your retirement, and that includes medical payments and everything else. You're entitled because you've done your servitude. But educating people on this is a difficult structure at times. Now, I'm doing, like I said, I'm bringing up the point where I'm putting together a new general affidavit for general people for newborn kids. And it's going to be interesting the way this one is going to be compared to the last one. But if you don't file for your rights as an adult, because by law you have 45 days they claim. I always go by 31 days or 30 days. But it says 45 days, so I'm putting the conflict of interest with both dates that I have for the 30 days and the 45 days in. So when your child is born, not birth, you're not making a manufacturer state of origin for that child, but you are with a birth certificate. So the birth certificate becomes the manufacturer state of origin of that individual life. So that's the same thing as a truck, a car, a motorcycle, whatever, has a manufacturer state of origin. This origin, this company, male and female, produced this child, so that's the manufacturer stamp number. I mean, it comes down to where it's really simple. But they've got so many of these things where they're bleeding off of our interests, or straw man accounts. They use that especially when you get kidnapped and held for ransom. And remember, it is illegal for them to ask the driver's license and that information. We do have the other part of that on new.org and trackers, because we have to make sure that you know what you're doing to protect yourself. And I mean, we know what you're doing. And I mean, you, in your own mind, say the same thing. We need to know. So that's the point, is properly educating yourselves and those around you. And when people have their opinions, look at their opinions, but don't take them into heart. I'm going through a buzz today because, I got the local Toledo cops calling me up today because they're going after me. Your boat is on public land. No, my boat is on my property. And then they're trying to tell me, or on my soil, and then they're trying to tell me, well, it's on a city easement. What kind of bullshit? These people are mentally challenged. I have the easement. I own the property. I have a privileged easement for the city because in front of my house is a registered salmon run that the state and the city killed. When I first came to this county over 20 years ago, we had a 4-foot runner that had fish in it. We had a 4 feet deep canal up here, all the way from here going right down to the little bay in Toledo. The way I heard it from the old men in the area here, until the mid-70s and early 80s, And my neighbor actually had some pictures of salmon in the stream right in my front house. I wish I would have been able to get some of those. He showed me those when I first moved in here, and after he passed, I wish I was able to get a couple of those. But he actually took pictures of 12-pound, 15-pound salmon in the creek bed in my front house. Now, on the side of my house, I have a creek bed that runs there, and that's part of the run, and that was part of the structure on my property line that gives me the rights to have the creek bed. And that means because the PGE gave me that right, because when they gave the pole over to me, so I wouldn't lose that easement, and I wanted to make sure that creek bed was still there, because I was not going to close the creek bed down, because my fantasy was putting solar in that area. In the wintertime I could run solar, but that was another time when I had my assets stolen and robbed. See, and this is the one thing that people need to realize what's going on in these circumstances. That when it comes down to this, and knowing your rights, and that's where I'm coming down to knowing if you're an animal. You have to know the situation if you're a male or female. You have to know it. And please don't give me the cross-gender stuff, because if you want to do that, fine. I don't care if you're gay, lesbian, or want to do whatever you want to do, but you can't change your DNA, folks. So if you want to live in fantasy, that's fine. But don't bring the rest of us into that fantasy world. We shouldn't have to be brought into it. I mean, I grew up in the Bay Area. We watched a lot of that structure. But that's not the issue. The issue is who gives a rat's tail. When it really comes down to it, who cares? You do what you want to do in your own personal life. That is your responsibility, your business. So long as you don't do property damage and you don't harm somebody, injure somebody, nobody has a right to have an opinion. That's the same thing as we have an abortion. You don't have a right to have an opinion when somebody has an abortion. I mean, you think about it, when you kill your kid, as a lot of these people say, you kill your kid, well, in time you start having a conscience. So if you people believe in whatever your religious points are, then believe in what you want. Isn't that what they call karma that will come around? So if you don't believe in what you practice, what you preach, you're just a bullshit con artist and liar like the rest of them. You're no different than an attorney, a lawyer, a con man, called an elected and public employee who violates their oath of office. So you got to remember, elected and public employees have an oath for servitude. And that's Title V. And I encourage you to read some of this stuff, these titles, these information, so this way you get to know what the law and administrative are. I know most people don't read this information. They always get sound bites, on the TV commercial, something to that effect. They always get somebody else's opinion. But remember, opinions are diapers. They get changed regularly. That's why when you look at your court cases, you always have court cases when it calls decisions. And then when it comes to a court decision, you always see where it says, it's an opinion of the court decision or decision of the opinion. I mean, it's a guesstimate. They can't put a liability issue unless it's a stamp liability, and they do that at times. But then that way, you got to realize they're taking liability, and that means financial instruments. So you need to do the research to check that out, but does happen. So when it comes down to, your newborn, it's an animal. It's a spined animal. So unless you claim and own that child, own the right to that birth, the state does. So if you don't claim that child within, I was under the impression it was 30 days, but some states say it's 45. And so I got to do more research on that, so I make sure I got that clarified either or when I put this letter together tonight. But the point being is that the parents have the right, and if you don't register that kid in 45 days, let's say, the state claims it as abandoned property. So when the state sits there and forces you off your property at gunpoint for unpaid taxes, that's illegal. So how they do it is that you're not on their property, so they let it sit, and in 30 days they file abandonment on property. So they say you abandoned the property. And you try to explain this to people, and people want to argue with you, and they don't want to be smart enough to do the research. And it always amazes me how people want to yell, scream, and argue instead of read. And I always get frustrated when people say, I can't understand that. And you send them the videos where it says A, B, C, D, E, F, and it walks you through it, and they still comprehend it. Well, I mean, I do comprehend when the people are mentally retarded, but I don't comprehend it when people are lazy. See, that's a separation. A lot of people out there want somebody else to do the work, and they want somebody else to take the liability. So if something goes wrong, they can point the finger and go, you did it. And that's the problem we have today. Nobody wants to be responsible. And it is one of those things we are really physically living today, and it is sad. So when you think about when it comes down to Title 7, 136, we're all vertebrate animals. See, think, folks. It's like we always recommend, watch the movie Interstate 60. Watch it at least twice. It explains your court system if you have an open mind. And that's the one thing that people don't realize is like Blazing Saddles is a wonderful movie, and people don't get that one. When, the black sheriff, and, they crown the sheriff, and they're going to send the sheriff out. But back then, the sheriff was not a corporation member. Today, they have corporation members called, what do they call those? Sheriff deputies. So if the deputy, that means they have no authority, no arresting authority. And the only way a deputy has any arresting authority is inside the courthouse, not outside. They're not supposed to be out publicly patrolling. And that is the point. People don't get it. They think that they have, public patrolling, that anybody has the right to be anywhere, and that's not exactly true. We do have a right to be anywhere on public right-of-way, public land, and that includes public right-of-way, what we put up, too, that, for the beaches, coast, and waterways, you don't have to buy a hunting and fishing license. No license required by federal law. But people don't read the federal law, but they're willing to call the cops and have their children arrested for it. They're willing to turn their back on their own bloodline because, oh, my God, you broke some law. Well, whose law? I always love it when people, when I say, well, didn't they break God's law? Oh, no, they didn't break God's law. And I said, well, yeah, they did, because you're saying that your God said that they didn't pay their penance. You didn't pay the privilege. You didn't bow your head and give your tariff for that. So these are things that when people sit there and go on all this crazy, radical, crazy stuff with religion and stuff, remember, it's called rights. Either you have a right to life or you don't. You have a right to be a Native American, and it doesn't mean just Indian Native. Read it. That's the point. Read some of the old treaties going back with the British government. And remember, all the damn treaties we have in this country are what the British government called the domestic terrorists. I don't trust the Britons with anything. I wouldn't trust them with my child. I wouldn't trust them with your child. Because they have a notorious rate of coming in and taking things. It's in history. That's the one point you cannot deny, the factual history that we're living with, the circumstances of these things. So when it comes down to filing your instruments, these are things to include. Your animal, write it in it. Have you been harassed? You've been assaulted? Cruelty to the animals. There are several federal laws that I'll be putting in this thing that I'm going through, that I'll be putting in the quotations into this, so people can look at the template and, use it or not. But, I'm putting the major parts of cruelty to the animal in this petition, or this criminal charges. See, and the one thing with that, you got to remember, if you're filing a complaint, complaining is called whining. And so when the cops will tell you, you have to fill out this complaint form, I rewrite it. I write my form, not their form. And that's how we get go through these things. We personalize it. We make it for us. Because now you have an injured man or woman. I call it injured party under Title 42, 3771. And so when you have these things, and it's knowing how these things work, comprehending how these circumstances work, and comprehending if you have a right or a privilege. And that's the main thing, is comprehending if you're lawful or legal. Legal have privileges. Lawful people have rights. So these are the big differences. And so how does that affect you? And that is the one thing that folks need to pay attention. How does it affect you when it comes down to these things? So anyhow, I got to move here for a minute. I got to let the dog out for a minute. This is going to be a tough chart. But, we've got the tools in our hands. And finally, and the other point, yes, we know that we got elected and public employees who are not honoring their oath. Yes, we know that these people are failing in their duties. Yes, I know what I filed on the city of Toledo, because now they're really panicking because I'm going after for them to prove they have authority. I want their job numbers. I want their badge numbers. I want their tax ID numbers. I want to prove that the taxes are being spent and paid. And they're panicking, going, you can't do that. They're calling me up on the phone dealing with my boat in my front yard on a Saturday. Oh, and it's all because of pictures. Mommy owns the house above me, so it's a burden and an eyesore for pictures. Mommy, who's a Toledo cop, who's an asshole who will shoot even a child. He's even put his pistol in children's face in the city of Toledo. But does anybody in this town give a fuck? No. Our people in this town, they don't give a shit, and they ain't fucking Christians. They lie, cheat, and steal just as bad as the cops do. That's what gets to me about this place. I came here, I expected different, but when you hear all these Christians say I'm a Christian, then how come you're not standing up protecting the children? See, we have more hypocrites out there than we do have natives or Americans or whatever you want to call us or whatever you want to call yourselves. But there's more people out there who claim that I'm going to protect the child, and you don't give a darn. If it ain't a 501c3 where you get a tax credit write-off, or if you ain't getting a pat in the back and a boost in the newspaper, you don't care about the children. And I haven't seen people that, done that or are willing to do that. I've seen a few, actually. I have seen it over time. And I know people beside myself that have literally given the shirt or coat off their back to people. And that does happen. We know that does happen. But we have these issues, so we can solve these issues, but the point being is it a tax write-off using it under the birth certificate bond, or is it something that we have kindness and we just do it? So think about when you talk about an animal, where it comes from. Who is the animal? Remember, you are the animal. We are part of the animal kingdom. And I'd much rather have animal law before I would have, human law. Because at least animal law, you have the right to your property. Human law, you have to ask permission from the Vatican, from the church, the privilege to have your stuff. And that's the one thing. People don't get it. Go to your Secretary of State. Oh, the other point, too, is that when you're doing your birth certificate or bonds and stuff, go to the Secretary of State and make sure to see what they got filed under you. And when you do that, you take your Social Security number in, called your registration number, and you ask them to run the name, and you ask them who registered you. You'll find out that somebody from the state or hospital registered you without your knowledge. So if you get that name, you can file criminal federal charges on them because they didn't have authorization to do that. But most people just let it go, and then they wonder why their kids get kidnapped or stolen or something to that effect, and why they have the problems they do. Well, most people don't want to learn. They want somebody else to walk them through it or hold their hand, which is fine. But when you're not learning it and you want somebody to hold your hand and then you want to be able to pass the buck so that way when you get bumpy roads or you do something wrong, you blame somebody else. No. We know better than that. You know better than that. So we do have solutions to these problems, but it is simple. Education, number one, knowing of your court system. Knowing that you have to ask the court system to approve your contract with them. Who had the lawful and legal rights of that child? Of course, it's always you because you never authorized it. You didn't give your bloodline away, and if you did, well, that's a different story. So that's what I'm saying. It's just stepping out, watching, paying attention, and what the future is going to be like because we don't know the future when it really comes down to it. We could estimate, but when we look back, you know, with the guesstimate that has happened in the last 40 years, we can look back because of TV and radio and stuff that were able to be saved in images primarily for the history and the world for life. But we haven't got to that point yet, so we don't know how much that's going to affect us down the road. So these are things that we need to look at. How is it going to participate? How is that going to affect me? And it's not always about self, because when people get in self-greed and all that, we see what's going on because that's where we're living today, the war back and the circumstances. So anyhow, I'm going to open up the floor. It's been, like I said, the last few days have been really tough for me being back at ICU again. So, you know, like I said, it's been interesting being out of the hospital the last couple of years and the lung and heart failures and a few other things I've gone through. So anyhow, why don't we go ahead and open up the floor to see if anybody's got some thoughts. Okay. Doesn't seem like anybody's got anything to speak up on. So if that's the case, why don't we just go ahead and call it a night, and we'll catch up with you folks later. Pay attention, new.Oregon Trackers. We'll have the new structure on the birth certificate. Literally, the other part is how to file to own your child, your bloodline, and to secure your rights. If you don't own yourself, if you don't own your bloodline when they're under 18, you have no rights. It's that simple. If you don't file for the right of your corporation is run by the Vatican Church. That means you have no authority. And the corporation is you, so just look in the mirror. With that, may the Great Spirit bless you. May the Creator look over you, and may Mother Earth keep us fed.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ed. And I guess we'll catch you all next week. Just to let you know, everybody here right now, I'm going to have to upload the video because for some reason now my streaming is not being able to stream worth crap at all. So I did everything I needed to do to fix it, but due to DSL internet and only having a 0.69 megabits upload, that pretty much means that streaming is going to be very difficult. Although I will upload every video until I can get the streaming going right. So with that, I got to get off and get everything ready to upload this video. So
okay.